I hope that you are really profiting by what you're hearing. I know that I'm just absolutely thrilled to be doing this. In fact, last night, Harlan, I dreamed of elephants breaking out of boxes, getting put in boxes to get taken places. I dreamed of scared lions and ferocious lions and scared goats. I dreamed of, it was just unbelievable. And I was falling out of my chair practically when you were doing that. I don't know why it was having such a profound impact. I don't know what you were doing to me, but you were doing something. So anyway, it's good to know that this morning, I'm the one who's sharp.
There you go. I was dreaming of bikinis on beaches. But
yeah, well, you know, good. I won't tell you about the rest of mine, so let's move on. Let's do the C3P4 because this thing rocks. So let's hear about it.
Okay. When I was in business and I had a hypnosis center, our center ran or died on sales. Originally, I did the sales, and I've already told you that I kept myself sharp by listening to Kenneth on the way in and on the way home every single day, so that when I would go into a sales situation, I would just be so in line with the criteria. I remember bringing an associate in to watch me, and on one day, he wanted to see how it was done. I closed 7 out of 7 sales effortlessly. But after a while, it became time for me to work on my business, not in my business, and I hired another salesperson. What to do to train them. I put them in a room, gave them max persuasion, and told them to listen. They came out and they started selling at about 50% of the people that they saw. And I wondered, why weren't they selling all of the people? Pretty much the way I was. My closing rate was 85 to 90% consistent. 50% meant I was going down and stuff. And I started monitoring their sales room. We were all wired for audio and video. And I saw that just about every other time they were forgetting to use the criteria. They just did a talking sale, exchanging information. And those were the occasions where they didn't do it. And I would say afterwards, why didn't you use the criteria? Oh, I forgot. It wasn't that they didn't think criteria was effective. It wasn't that they didn't mean to do it. It's just that they got distracted or something was on their mind. And I realized that they needed something more. I put signs around the sales office, and it was like signs were remember the big C. And when clients would come in and say what the big C was, and the people would say, oh, it's about overcoming your challenge. But it was a reminder to them to get the criteria. They still didn't do it all the time. And that's when I came up with something else. How can I arrange things so that there's an established procedure that makes it brain dead simple for people to close and puts in all of the things that we've been talking about in unconscious persuasion? What I came up with was the process that we're about to share called C3P4. C3 stands for number 1, C, which is the unconscious, the C is for conscious, unconscious hello. When you meet the person for the first time, you do the unconscious hello. Number 2, C3, is to calibrate, get their yeses and nos. The third C is getting their criteria. So C3, unconscious hello, calibrate criteria. And then there's P4, find out about their present state, find about their problem state, pace them, and finally pay off. I developed this and refined this a number of times, and I found that if people listened to Max Persuasion and understood the concepts, and then they learned how to do the unconscious hello and get the yeses and the nos, this sheet made them darn near unstoppable.
That's an important thing.
That's an important thing. And the nice thing about the way this worked was you could have this sheet in front of you on a clipboard, and in fact we did, And people were required to put the name of the client at the top, right here, client name. And now they had this cheat sheet in front of them, except that the clients perceived that they were being professional when they filled out the information. And since it was a quasi-medical clinic, we had the people who were doing the intake wear lab coats. And it added to why they were taking down their history. We've subsequently switched this to a lot of other professions. As a matter of fact, I have yet to see a profession where this procedure will not work. It works great in person. It works great on the phone. So whatever you're doing, C3P4 should be at the heart of what you do.
Now let me also say, what you're going to hear from us today is how Harlan adapted these strategies for weight loss in a weight loss clinic in a one-call close environment. Okay? I know a lot of you watching aren't necessarily doing one-call closes, or you're doing you have a very extended process, for example. That's fine. You can still work this in. You don't have to go through all of it the first time you see someone. You might have a fact-finding presentation in which you're looking more just to collect what you need to be able to come back and make presentations again. Most likely, you could go through the whole C3 process on the first visit. You might want to go a little further. You might want to bring you might want to calibrate, for example, yes and no's as well. You can be leading people as well during this process. But you might want to save some of the rest of it for the actual presentation, depending. So you could adjust this. You can absolutely modify it to suit your particular needs. Correct? We'll just go through it like you did for your weight loss business here.
Okay, exactly. So what we want here is we're going to go through it step by step, follow the model, adapt it. As a matter of fact, if you adapt this and you post this on the forum, we'll go over it and give you feedback on it. You may not even need it. It's pretty simple. Let's go. Hopefully you have your sheet in front of you. So the first thing is, it says here lobby greeting. This means the first time that you meet them, whether it's in the lobby, whether it's in a consultation room, whether it's in an automobile showroom, you greet them and you say, "Hi, my name is Harlan Pussy. I'm very pleased to meet you." And you match their hello. Simple. Nothing to elaborate. Nothing any different than what we talked about in the presentation on the unconscious hello. Second, at this point, you can do your yeses and nos anytime. I preferred to do them when they came into the consultation room. You can do them in public, which is asking simple yes-no questions. Mr. McKenzie, may I call you Robert? Call you Robert, yes. Have you ever been to this automobile showroom before? Do you currently drive a Toyota? But until you get a yeses or a no, or Kenrick doing only half the work, and just getting a yes, calibrate them. Okay. Then when you're with them, you want to ask your criteria question. The criteria question that we did was, it's a loaded criteria question, and the reason that's a loaded criteria question is because we played a lot on the idea that people have a secret fantasy that weight loss should be magic. And because weight loss should be magic, we presented it in a magical situation. If I had a magical wand and we were the Wizard of Oz and could grant you a wish and put you in Kansas, and Kansas for you being successful at weight loss, what's the most important thing to you about weight loss?
Let me say a couple things about that. Remember yesterday Harlan and I talked about everybody knows how to hear a story. You go into your story trance and you become receptive. Your walls drop and you just take it in. It's why it's so beautiful, because people don't resist stories. Okay. In the same way, people love this fast, easy mentality. And it's certainly prevalent um, in the United States, Canada, Europe. It's maybe less prevalent yeah, I think it's pretty much prevalent everywhere. Everyone's trying to get this. You don't have to do any work, but you can have the whole world. You could become a multi-billionaire in just 16 hours if you buy this product.
My product.
Yeah, and that's just to get started. Then when you want to get the real money, well, you'll come get my products. Okay, but the thing of it is, look, since everybody likes that, what does that mean? It means it lessens resistance. So Harlan is using this magic frame to lower resistance and get people to tell him quickly what they really want. Okay, I also like this frame. I think it's very effective. There's a lot of ways you can choose to do it. I talked a lot about the different methods of doing this in the Persuasion 911, in a lot of my stuff, and I've kept on advancing this. You can start with, why did you come? Or why did you decide to see me? And let them set the direction. I love that one too. And if you want to start with that, the next thing could be, great, so you would like to accomplish X, and if I could somehow wave a magic wand and get you exactly what you wanted, tell me what's important about that. That would be another way you could implement the magic part of it. Or you could forego the magic part of it altogether. That choice is yours. Harlan uses it because it's a frame that disperses resistance and gets him quick information to what he wants, and it works. It's really good.
Okay. So they give me their criteria, or the first level of their criteria. As you can see from the form, we acknowledge, great. Now what's most important to you about whatever answer they gave you above? Typically, they would say something, what's important to you about losing weight? And they would say, looking and feeling better. Great. That's fantastic. What's important to you about looking and feeling better? And they'll say something like, oh, then my husband will pay more attention to me. Fantastic. Yeah, he probably will when you're down in, a size, gosh, like, the way he was when he met you. Undoubtedly, he'll pay a lot more attention. Now, ultimately, what will that do for you? And then they'll say something like, well, then I'd have my self-esteem back, or then I would truly be happy. And there you were at their ultimate criteria. Your entire presentation is aimed at solving that criteria, is getting them, connecting them to their criteria.
Wait a minute, let me say something. What Harlan means by that is every word out of your mouth from that moment forward needs to connect your product or service to that criteria. What's that criteria? Having your self-esteem back.
Right, or being happy. Whatever the ultimate criteria
Let's take the self-esteem back.
Everything that you do is going towards that direction.
For example, Harlan, our program starts with 6 individualized sessions. Each session works to help you to feel good about you so that the weight naturally comes off and you're ready to have that extra attention again from your husband like you would like to have.
There you go. Every single thing that your program does is aimed at that criteria. Okay. The more you follow that, the more successful you're going to be. That's the only thing that your criteria does. Do not, at this point, try and shift people's criteria. Okay, I know people who did, and they would say, well, that's not important. It's really important. Your health is really important. Don't do that. That's stupid. If either Kendrick or I are around and we see you doing that, we will slap you hard. Okay? So don't do that.
And by the way, Harlan then asks, what is their meta program? And what you might want to make a little note, what I believe he's referring to is, are they moving towards or away from in that criteria? And having their self-esteem back would be an away from criteria. Those of you in my coaching program or that have taken into the different programs I have, you know that we talk about that. Meta programs, there's a lot of them. So I think you're talking about the towards and away, right?
And if you don't have Max Persuasion, or Kenrick's Breakthroughs in Persuasion, or Persuading the Affluent, you should crawl on your belly to get them. They're that good. You really should know them.
And my favorite is the extended program that we did. That's my all-time
Persuasion
favorite.
Factor?
Yeah, Persuasion Factor is we get into that at great length, and it's just it's a really, really, really exceptional. Any of those, but you're right. All of that describes these different things in different various ways. It's important.
And by the way, if you're watching this and you're impressed, and you think that you're ready to go to the next level, contact Kim about working with Kenneth one-on-one. All right, let's get back to what we're doing here. The next step is going to present state questions. We're shifting, and I want you to pay attention to this presentation. What you're doing is you're starting to work with their emotions. There is an old expression that says, if they're crying, they're buying. And what you want to do is you want to start to shift their emotional state. Up until now, their emotional state has been neutral. Now we're on the escalator, and it's starting to go down.
But I need to say something about that. Yeah, it's true. There's an old saying that says that. I don't like that saying very much. There's a whole bunch of dumb sayings about sales, if you ask me. A better saying would be, if they're emotional, they're buying, whether the emotion is negative or positive. But if they're negatively emotional, meaning if you've exposed a wound in some way, or they've brought that up themselves, and they're going to want to fix that. If you have a broken arm, you're probably going to want more rapid attention to get that resolved than if there's an opportunity to make an extra $100 today. In other words, the broken arm dangling, and not functioning is going to require immediate help. You're going to go immediately to get that resolved, or have someone come to you to try to get that resolved. Okay? And so if we can find a wound and expose it and get them emoting in that direction, wow, it's like a supercharged turbo sale. Be careful you don't go too far if they're naturally the kind of person that doesn't go that direction.
Okay. So here we go. Please tell me something about your current situation, just the kinds of things you're doing that actually contribute to the weight. At this point, they'll tell you they're eating at night, they're not exercising, they're eating too much, they're eating the wrong foods, whatever it is. Can you tell me a little bit about your weight loss history? What worked? What didn't? How long can you keep the weight off? How fast it comes back? Things like that. Now, what's happening here is you're getting them to access past failures. And while you're doing that, and these are ordinary questions that people would ask, but all of these questions are pointed at failure. And you're starting the emotional turbulence, or more properly, you're uncovering the emotional turbulence.
Let me say something about that. All right with you?
Sure. We've got all day.
All right. The idea here, though, and I'm really glad, Harlan, you said this. You have to know you're starting them in this direction. Harlan said it dead on. You're bringing back past failures. How can you be sure that you don't link those to you? That's why we're giving you this. This is where the brilliance really begins, in my opinion, because you need to know that you're bringing up their past failures so you can link them to those past other things and not to you. This is a really critical turning point right here. And by the way, if you're an advisor, for example, obviously your question could sound like something like, tell me about your current situation. Tell me about what you're currently doing. And they'll tell you, about what they're doing. And then you might say, tell me a little bit about your investing history.
Tell me a little bit about times that you've lost money in investing. Tell me about those times that you were frustrated because you thought you were doing the right thing, but you ended up losing your house, your shirt, your job. You're out on the street with a tin can hoping somebody will buy one of your pencils.
I've experienced that this morning.
Okay.
Someone coming to me. I think that's normal here in Florida, isn't it? But yeah, so look at that, okay, and ask them these questions. So you can just adapt this, and you need to adapt this to your business, to your style.
Okay. Typically, we noticed that when people came in for weight loss help, they were at their highest weight. So we asked them, are you at the highest weight now?
Are you at the level where you've lost the most amount of money now?
How did you feel when the weight came back? Taking the emotions and going down. Now, up until now, we were on the escalator. We're switching from the escalator, and now we're getting on to the elevator. And when we go onto the elevator, the crazed elevator operator is going to pick up the axe, and he's about to hack through the cables. And it's going to be like on the Tower of Terror in Disney World, where the thing is just going to drop. Free fall. Here we go. Moving to the area of problems, how is your weight a problem for you now? And they will start bringing up, I can't breathe, I can't move as quickly, I can't keep up with my children or grandchildren. I have a pain in my hips because I'm just too heavy. Whatever the thing is, I can't fit into my the clothes that I have in my closet. I keep buying new clothes. How are emotions involved? Notice that every sentence here is an NLP pattern called a presupposition. It's presumed that emotions are involved. How is this affecting your stress level? How is this affecting your self-esteem? How do you feel when you look in the mirror? Okay? Very often, people would say, I feel like crying, or they just start crying right there, at which point the smart person is saying inside, okay, I just made the sale. What kind of impact does this have on your relationships? Is your husband or partner supportive of you losing weight? The reason that you're doing this question now is to isolate the objection that they need later on to go talk to their husband. So by bringing this up now in the open and discussing it, that objection doesn't exist later on. If you do this, you will never hear that objection again.
Just on the
For weight loss. Does your husband know that you're here right now? And sometimes they'll say, oh, yes, absolutely. Okay?
or other times no. Did you ever say to them, for example, if someone said no, so this is something you're wanting to keep private?
Yeah. Or I would say, I'm curious as to why. And sometimes they would say, my husband just doesn't understand me, or my husband knows how important this is to me, and said, I can do whatever I want if it makes sense to me. The whole point of this section is to isolate the objection and to remove it from the table so it never comes back to bite you again. Remember, if you have 3 objections and one of them goes away, then you're done. You're down to 2, and it's just a matter of dealing with the 2. What's the worst thing for you about being overweight? And they will come up with their most emotional thing. There is no predicting what they were going to come up with, but whatever it is, it's going to be very powerful for them. Now I'm going to ask you a question that probably nobody's ever asked you before. What are the 3 top problems that you need to overcome to lose weight and keep it off for good? And they will think for a minute, maybe they'll go off into a little trance, and they'll come back and they'll tell you things like, I need to eat smaller portions, I need to eat the right kinds of foods, and I need to exercise. Everybody knows what they should be doing. Once you have that information, you're basically done. The rest of the program is showing them how what you have to offer them solves problem 1, solves problem 2, solves problem 3, and gets them to fulfill their criteria. If you do that, the sale is totally yours to lose.
So especially, remember now, when you met them, you did the unconscious hello. You have rapport with their unconscious. You anchored it by looking over their ear. So every time you look over their ear like that, if you want to, you'll be able to reinforce the relationship that you have, the good positive feelings of trust and rapport. You're probably also mirroring them and doing all of the things that you know how to do to continue to enhance your connection with them. Okay? You have immediately gotten their yes and no. You've calibrated to it so that now as they talk, you know exactly what's going on.
You know exactly what they're thinking. There aren't going to be any surprises at the end of this. We're now going to start building your knowledge of calibration and the yeses and nos into the last part of the sale. So we started here emotionally. They started coming down gently. Then they hit the Tower of Terror. Now they're at bottom. It's time to build them up emotionally and have them leave smiling, having given you their credit card or a check. Here's how you do that. We pace. How is your criteria, how is your self-esteem going to be affected if you don't deal with these problems? Flashback, first DVD, second DVD we talked about in this series was negative criteria. This is it right here. We have the negative criteria question. This avoidance. How is your self-esteem going to be affected if you don't deal with this problem? Next is, what are you missing out on as a result of being overweight? And they'll tell you. Again, we're keeping them focused on that negative criteria. Spell it out. What are the consequences for health? What are the consequences for quality of life? What are the consequences for relationships? We want them telling you what are the long-term impact of them not dealing with this situation. Okay. What effect now does all of this have on your self-esteem? And they recognize that there is something separating them from their goal of self-esteem, from fulfilling their criteria, and it's all of these negatives which are encapsulated in the three problems. If they just solve the three problems, they get their criteria, and they get all of this stuff as well.
In other words, Harlan's showing them that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
That's correct. How will you feel yourself? Now we take them way into the future. How will you feel about yourself if 10 years from now your weight is the same or worse? That's your ultimate closing question right there. Okay, you make them do it. Now, at this point, in this whole section on pacing questions, I'm asking them the question, and you can choose your question, but this is the one that I'm doing, is, do you understand me? Do you follow me? And the ultimate one that was proved to be the best and most successful was, does this make sense to you? Okay? Because if they said it made sense to them, I knew I had a sale. Okay? So I'm looking for the yeses and the nos. And if I'm getting a no, I don't go any further. I don't say, oh, that's nice, and just go on anyway. I stop until I go back and I get a yes.
And by the way, it's even more profound than that, because if they've told you what the impact this is on their health, if they've told you the impact this has on their self-esteem, and then you ask, does this make sense? How can it really not make sense? They said it. You didn't. But yet, what's happening is there's an inferred, a presupposed additional question. Does this make sense as it applies to you working with us? So when they say yes, they're also buying into that presupposition. It's really, really profound.
Okay. So we're now really in the power alley of what about your family or loved ones if you don't fix this situation? And if it was connected to a spouse, then this is to get them moving and motivated. Now, ultimately, you say to them, what do you think you need to lose weight in a natural, permanent way? And just sit back, because they're going to tell you any of the following. Number one is they're going to say, I need to fix problem 1, problem 2, and problem 3. Now, you have essentially set this up as their hurdle to overcome, and they're going to tell you, that's it. If I can do those 3 things, I'm good. But be prepared. Now, you haven't said a word about your program yet. All you've done is followed the procedure, done the unconscious hello. And I want you to know that most of the time when I would say, what do you think you need to lose weight in a natural and permanent way, people would say, you. They would say, your program. They didn't even know what the program was at this point, but they were already sold on an unconscious level. That's how effective this stuff is. If you don't get that, go back and watch that section again, because basically, even before they know a thing that you do, they want you to do it. That's the bottom line. What would weight loss accomplish for you? Guess what they're going to supply at that point? Their self-esteem. So the problems and the self-esteem have just come back up to the surface. What's the biggest driving factor that brought you to make a change right now? That's a presupposition of time that they're ready to make a change right now. What would your life be like if you solved problem 1, problem 2, and problem 3 for good? Having them reiterate, then I would get my criteria. What would you do that you can't do now? We shift them totally from negative towards the positive. And they start telling you all the good stuff because we've moved them emotionally. On a scale from 0 to 10, how much do you want to lose the weight? And you would get typically 9s, 10s, 12s, 25s. If you got a 4, it didn't happen very often. If you got a 5, for whatever reason, there's something else going on.
But let me tell you, if you get a real low number like that, you've also missed everything to do with all of the signaling that you should have been getting when you ask things like, are you with me so far? Does this make sense to you? Do you understand? And you will have been getting lots of conflicting information that you did not see.
Now, the next thing is you talk about whatever you're going to offer. What you're going to offer, every single part of the program has as its one goal, solving problem 1, solving problem 2, solving problem 3, and getting them their criteria. Will that be check or credit card? When would you like to get started? That's all. It's as simple as that. Don't mess this up. You can fire your yes anchor when you ask that question. That would be an advantage. But the truth of the matter is, all of the stuff is preloaded into the system. It's really hard to mess this up.
Exactly. Let me go over with you. And by the way, we can talk at length about the C3P4. We could spend a lot more time. But at this point, you understand what we're doing. All you have to do is customize it a little bit for you. All you have to do is keep this in front of you so that you kind of have a track to run on.
It forces you to follow this. That's the beauty of this. And this has been used in dozens of professions so far.
Yeah.
There has not been a single recorded episode of a person saying, why are you writing down my answers? On the contrary, they consider you professional for doing it. So have this on a pad in front of you. Get their name on it. Write the answers down, because using this form forces you to follow the system. And if you follow the system, there is no way that your sales are going to do anything but skyrocket.
I agree 100%. Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to just go back and, by way of winding this up, review with you some of the key elements that are built into the C3P4 and that we've covered with you in detail. So let's go back to the concept of gaining rapport instantly, outside of someone's awareness, without all the need for pacing and leading and matching their representational system and yada, yada, yada. This is done through the unconscious hello, and to break down the unconscious hello, it's done at a distance. It happens quick, like that. It is where you stay in a neutral state and you wait for the other person to give you their hello. Ultimately, if they don't, you may go ahead and do whatever you want. But most people will, if you just wait a second, give you their signal. It could be, like I did, raising my eyes. It could be a tilt of the head. It could be a shift of the body. It could be all kinds of things. Whatever it is, replay it back. When you replay it back, generally they'll smile, you smile, and look over one of their ears. Which ear, it doesn't matter. The whole goal is you're creating an anchor so that when you look over their ear in the future, it'll remind them, it'll give them that feeling that you have rapport with them. So the first step to the unconscious persuasion process is instantaneous rapport. It's an instantaneous recognition. You're friendly. You're on their wavelength. You're communicating with them like a fax machine, like Harlan talked about. Okay? That is the very first and most important process. With that process, you've gained a degree of trust with their unconscious mind, with the part that rules who they are, if you will, that puts you in the perspective of being listened to. And that's why this is such an important first step. The second thing you want to do is discover their yes and no, their responses. You're going to calibrate to this. Look, this single-handedly almost will make you look psychic. It will give you information you've never been able to have access to before, other than on the days when you've been on. Now you're going to be on all the time if you just remember to do it. It is just that simple. You can ask simple questions like Harlan and I demonstrated, that is, ask questions for yes, ask questions for no. If you want to cheat once you get a little bit more advanced, I just need the yes ones. I don't really care much about the no ones, because anything other than yes is a no in my opinion. If it's not a solid yes, it's not good enough for me. Okay, so, but get the no's to start with so you can hear that. I also like the no's for other advanced reasons, like potentially firing off an anchor when a person talks about something that you don't like. For example, there's all kinds of ways you can use the no response, but for the most part, I found that's more manipulative than you really need to be. All you really need to do is know the difference between the yeses and the nos. At that moment, once you know, and you know that you know consciously, you now are like a human lie detector for the balance of the time you spend with that person, and into the future as well. You have insight into everything they say and do. It's easy and it's quick. You know if they're lying or if they're telling the truth. And if they're not telling the truth, you might just explore that a little deeper if you need to get to the bottom of something with them. So it's a very profound way for you to see into what's going on with them. The next thing you want to do is, in one way or another, elicit their criteria. The breakthrough that Harlan and I discovered, and this came about as a result of Harlan asking me questions that I couldn't answer. And he would say to me things like, "Kenrick, it just seems to me that you don't always ask criteria in the same way. I've seen you in groups not do it and know exactly what people's criteria are. What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm not." And he says, "Yes, you are. I've seen you. And, Kenrick, moreover, let's just assume for a minute that you are. If you were, how would it be possible? What could be possible?" So I let down my guard, and I said, "Okay," and it hit me right between the eyes. I was actually doing something that I've talked long and loud about not doing so much of. Okay, now we're exposing it for you. And that is, go out and elicit criteria from a lot of people in your field. Boil it down to the top 3 or 4 or 5 criteria in your field. If you're doing a group presentation and you want to do this, have 3 or 4 or 5 stories, case histories, examples that you talk about, and watch who in the audience responds. Then you'll know when it comes time to ask for an appointment to see them one-on-one, or when you're talking about how to move to the next level, you'll know what their criteria is. You can make note of it right on your form. This, in and of itself, was one of the biggest breakthroughs I think I've ever come up with in the field of persuasion that Harlan and I figured out. And I want you to know, this is one of the main reasons I wanted to do this course again. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to get it on video just like this, so you could hear us and watch us as we go through and explain this process in great deal. I, in a room, now talk about examples. I tell stories. I see who's responding. I categorize them in my mind. For example, if I'm doing it, and I'm looking at promoting what I do, for example, I'm looking at who wants to have more help to get ahead and is already pretty successful at what they're doing, but would like to go quickly to the next level. Right? These would be people that might be open to my advanced coaching group program. Who in here is struggling with just staying afloat? These people I need to go and give some help to right in the program itself, because I know good and well that their maybe tomorrow or their next week depends on maybe me finding one way to help them get ahead. I'm categorizing people into little groups, if you will. And then I'm able to recall and remember. And by the way, memory recall is a whole other issue. I've got it for what I want real well, but I don't have it as well as I might like, for example, with names. So you might want to go study some strategies on memory so that you can remember who you've put into the different groups. Okay? You'll also find, I find this to be true, that when the time comes to talk to them one-on-one, I just know what group they're in. Okay? And it came about as a result of fleshing this section out. Okay. If you've done this in a group, or even one-on-one or one-on-two or three, you might want to verify that you have it right. You would do that by bringing up that criteria again and watching to see if you get a yes response, watching to see if the person goes along with you to see what's going on. Okay? By the way, in groups, you can also do the yes or no. You can ask some simple questions that will elicit yeses and nos pretty simply. Okay? There are those of you in the group that have been here before, correct? Some heads will nod. Some will shake. Okay? For some of you, this is your first time to this area. Or this is your first time to this hotel. Or this is your first time being exposed to this kind of information. Some heads will nod. Some heads will shake. You can start to see when people are giving you real information and when they're holding back or trying to act, like they're not going to be forthcoming or what have you. But you can get this yes or no information in groups and individuals. Okay, if you want to anchor the criteria, you can certainly do that too. Once you've elicited the criteria, I could in a group say, so I've covered a couple of the things that I know are important to most of you. And as you think about what that is, I want you to begin to connect those ideas to what I'm going to be talking about next. In fact, the whole realm of financial advice, for example, you could see coming from my mouth and hear as I describe it as being the kind of thing that I embody as we talk. What am I doing? I'm anchoring every single thing that you want, I am. That's what I'm doing. If I were an advisor, just as an example, talking to a group. You can do this for any industry, anywhere. Okay? As you imagine, the ultimate answers that life can give in the realm of real estate, selling your property, or name the field, I think as you look at what I give you today, you'll begin to see those answers. I'm just literally linking it to me. You can do it in any number of ways, using any of the three big representational systems, doing it outside of their awareness by using the one that they're not paying attention to the most. Now remember, Carl and I talked about feeding the conscious mind. That is, feeding those representational systems that they are most aware of while you're anchoring outside of it. Okay, now that's especially helpful if you're talking on the phone or you're live one-on-one with a person. If you're in a group, there's going to be everybody using different systems. Still, you can eloquently do this, and you can do it with real power. If you're one-on-one, you can be checking to see on a regular basis which system are they using the most. Which of the visual, auditory, or kinesthetic systems are they using? Here's the nice thing. When someone goes into a state of stress, they're going to go into their preferred system. This is really, really slick. So when Harlan designed the C3P4 and he gets into the negative states, he knows he's going to be pushing them right into the system that they use the most. And in so doing, it's very, very easy to calibrate what they're doing. You know their preferred system. Which one do you want to anchor in? Anyone else? Okay, it's pretty much that simple. You can check for whether they're going towards or away as you're getting their criteria and other meta programs if you know them. You can elicit their problem state. Again, a big change from before. I didn't so much want to elicit problem states all the time in people. And then I began to realize every time I got a problem state from an individual, I made the sale. Almost without question. So if you can get a problem state, if you can drop the elevator through the floor, as Harlan mentioned, then what you're going to do is close like that. It's going to be so easy. They want to repair the broken arm. It's the 800-pound gorilla in the room that most people don't talk about, but you will. It's what makes the slippery slope slippery. It greases the chute and puts you right in the realm of making that sale. On top of that, for them to communicate pain to you also transfers rapport to you. You're also in the know about what the pain is, so you can be the solution and not be anchored to the problem. There's so much really, really powerful stuff. We'll amplify this to make it really easy. That's like pouring oil on the chute. We'll amplify it so that more rapport is transferred to us. They'll tell us more personal information, and they'll slide right into our order process. You check to see if they're with you by simply asking. Make sense to you, Harlan? You with me? Well, we see a congruent yes. If we see no, what are we going to do? We're going to probe. We're going to find out a little bit more what's going on so that we can get them right back into our chute, right headed towards our order process. Okay? Asking of these yes and no's should generally come at the beginning. I like it too at the beginning. Why wait to know if they're with you or not? All right? Check if they're ready to close. Again, it's as simple as, are you with me? Do you understand? Fire off the anchors for the criteria, for the rapport. Look over their ear if you'd like. Fire off their guess anchor if you're so inclined, and ask if they'd like to get started. Ask, are you ready to get started now? Or is there anything else you need to know in order to get started? Real simple. Closing is not difficult. When you do this, 9 times out of 10, or maybe more, you're going to find you don't really have objections. If you do, you've probably headed most of them off in this. What you'll
Sometimes it's just a matter of repeating something that they needed to hear it again, or they needed to state it in their words, or turn it around on them, and they say, well, what do you think the answer to that is? And they will close themselves.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I've found that if you're in a battle of wits with a person, or you're in a closing battle, so to speak, odds are you're going to lose. Odds are you don't have the rapport you need. Odds are you've missed something probably the second they walked in the door. You've missed the unconscious hello. You've missed calibrating yeses and nos. You didn't get their criteria. And in my opinion, you've missed being a professional persuader. So go back. That's what this course is all about. Go back and do every one of the exercises to get better at every step along the way.
Test C3P4 with friends. Sit down with friends before you do it live with someone. You will be blown away by the elegance and simplicity of just how darn well this thing works.
Post it online on the forum, and we'll respond. Okay, we'll take a look at it and we'll respond, and you'll see that that's the way it is. All you have to do is customize it a little bit for your niche, for your industry, for your product or service. The way you go, it works just that simply. This is pretty slick stuff, pretty sharp, isn't it?
It is. It works. It's demonstrable. This is not theory. This is practice. We've shown you what to do. Now go practice. The week that we recorded this, one of the greatest yoga teachers in the world, one of the founders of modern yoga, passed away. And he had one saying. And the saying was, practice and all is coming. And that seems to be an appropriate way to wrap this up. Practice and all is coming. You will be able to do all of the things here. Maybe not overnight, maybe it'll take a week, maybe it'll take a couple of months, but you will get to that level because we've seen many people for whom this has become a reality.
This has been a real honor. Again, it's the first time I can recall ever doing something in a studio on video like this. It's a pleasure to work with Harlan. We've worked together a lot over the years. And I look forward to interacting with you. You obviously know the website, maxpersuasion.com. But also feel free to write Kim at maxpersuasion.com. And she'll get back to you with any questions. Post your questions to the forum if they're about this course. Do not write questions in email. Please post them to the forum so that we can write publicly and make sure that everybody benefits. You'll be amazed, blown away, how powerful it is to actually think through an issue, post it, and get a response to it. I think you'll find that to be a really powerful thing. So by all means, we want to hear from you with any questions that you might have. Thanks again for purchasing this program, and I look forward to interacting with you in the future in one of our upcoming events.